Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 718 for the 10th of July 2022. Richard Saunders coming to you today from Salinas, California. I'm in the war room at Catnip Cuttings. What is it, Susan Gerber?
Catnip Corners.
Catnip Corners here in Salinas. I'm visiting Susan and Mark Edward for a few days to just relax and have a lot of fun. Now, you and I are about to have a chat about guerrilla skepticism and your wonderful project here.
The Jerry Andrus archival
Amazing. I'm
project.
looking at thousands of files here in the war room, which are correspondence and photographs and ideas and designs. It's extraordinary, Susan.
Absolutely.
It's extraordinary. We'll get to that.
Tell me about it.
And you're scanning everything. It's hard to believe. We're going to chat about that. Then we get an afternoon of mentalism with Mark Edward, where he's going to try and befuddle us with some ESP cards.
Absolutely. He befuddles me all the time.
Does he? I see. All right. Well, I'm going to be befuddled. Then we'll have a chat to Mark about mentalism in general. Then to round off the show, it's Trove. Back to the Trove archives. We're going to be looking at a man called Andrei Paharic, who was one of the men responsible for bringing out Uri Geller.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and
I love the Trove segments.
thank you. Me too. It's really fun. It's really fun to do, and I encourage people to go to Trove at trove.nla.gov.au and have a look at those archives. But it's a packed episode. It's full to the brim. So why don't you and I run around the corner, out to the hall, run down the hall, and what can we find in your kitchen?
I think we might find some Vegemite and
Mustics?
some old pizza from last night. And who knows what? Maybe a cat.
Maybe a cat. While we do that, we hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
I think we need to think. Here's Susan Gerbic.
Well, no, Susan Gerbic, normally microphones have black fuzzy things on the end. This one has a red fuzzy thing, and it's on the end of a ruler which has been painted black.
I don't know about you guys in Australia, but that is burnt orange. That is not whatever color you just said.
She's talking about the foam over the microphone.
Yeah.
This is my portable gear. I'm in the heartland of guerrilla skepticism on Wikipedia.
Right. This is
Salinas.
We call this the war room.
And it's much as I remember it. I haven't been here for 2.5 years, and it's just as cluttered and chaotic, but even more so, I think. Yeah, the pictures are all still there.
I don't think I had pictures here before.
Oh, you did?
No,
Yeah,
not like this.
Not as many, but
I added them because of the pandemic. I wanted to be able to sit in my chair in my office and look at any direction. I would see a picture on the wall of a good memory. And there's probably 50 8x10 photos on the wall around the edge of the ceiling. And
you did have some before, because I remember sitting in this room and looking at all these wonderful memories. I haven't seen that one. That's you and I up there. I think that was at the Winchester Mystery House or something like that.
Yes,
but
it was.
The other one, I'm pointing over the other shoulder in the other direction, is a wonderful photograph of you and I caught mid-interview in New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yes.
We were at that, we'd broken out at a conference. And we went to, I think it was a little
The airport.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, that's a long time ago. What was that, 2017, 16,
Easily.
15?
It's frightening how quickly the years go by. But you and I have been meeting up at conferences and conventions for many years, apart from the last 2.5, of course.
Right.
Which meant, but I see you regularly. And
on Zoom.
On Zoom. Your wonderful trivia quiz. How long that's been going now?
We're just having our third year.
No.
Yes, we're on season 3. I can't believe it myself, but we started in June of 2020, so we're in June of 2022.
That's
so.
impressive. This is a weekly trivia afternoon. Well, in Australia, it starts
Friday.
It's Friday. Yeah, it's Friday in Australia, Thursday night here, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just 4 rounds of trivia, then
5 rounds, and we've never missed a Thursday. We've even had them on holidays, and everybody listening, you're welcome to join. You'll
4
find
rounds.
that
It's 3 rounds plus a
4 rounds.
4 rounds and a bonus. Okay.
So we've been doing this for years now. Anybody listening, you'll find the instructions on how to join it on my Facebook page. You're welcome to come hang out. It's a blast. There's about 40 of us, but on 10 people or so have other things going on, but it's usually about 25 to 30 people show up each week.
It's great fun, and it got a lot of people through some dark times in the pandemic because it was their including you. It was a weekly get together. They could see friends, they could have a good time when the news outside wasn't so good. So let's catch up now in the last little while. What's new on the horizon for GSOW?
Well, we've really had an interesting year in GSOW that it would take me way too long to explain it, but GSOW has gone a little more underground as far as who my editors are and what the Wikipedia pages are we have edited. We are not doing anything wrong, but there was a lot of concern in the Wikipedia community that the guerrilla skeptics, were maybe gaining too much power, maybe compromising things, even though we weren't, because we're private.
Being too active.
Well, we're very private. We communicate on Facebook, and they don't like that because they can't see the conversations we're having. So it was pretty intense for about 6 months, and it's all over now. But people will notice that I'm not sharing the pages we have written because I don't want people to be able to trace necessarily who the editors are, and it's overcautious, I should say. And again, we're doing nothing wrong, but we're still active. Yeah. But I think because of that, I don't have as many editors that are joining us, and we don't feel as active as we were.
You're still playing by the rules.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, we had to prove that we were following the rules, and we were the community of Wikipedia had to look at everything we were doing, and they kind of said, "Oh, okay, well, keep doing what you're doing," basically is what they said. And it's all good. But I don't think we've attracted as many editors because I'm not being quite as aggressive about it. Right. But we are still writing pages. Oh my gosh, this morning I just noticed we're at 117 million page views.
Oh, it just gets more and more.
And the promo that I was just listening to, the Skeptic Zone, said we were at, oh gosh, I recorded it a couple of years ago. We were at 51 million. And I thought, oh my gosh, we just hit 117 million.
Well, I might have to do a new promo with you while I'm visiting you for the next few days. But one of the pages you were working on is a place in New Zealand you and I have been to called Puzzling World. In fact, that photograph we were discussing before of you and I having a chat at the same visit. Hello, a bird just nearly flew into the window.
No, it's a cat. It's a bird feeder.
It's a bird feeder. Oh, I see. All right.
When the birds hit it, it knocks against the window.
It's all happening here. We went to Puzzling World, which was this wonky, crazy place with puzzles and slanted rooms, which mean that you're walking uphill and downhill at the same time. But they had for many years a psychic challenge, which has just come to an end. That's interesting.
Yes, it was an amazing place. GSOW rewrote that Wikipedia page a few years ago. Wonderful attraction. Too bad it's so far off the beaten track.
It is a bit, yeah. It's out of Queenstown, but it's hard to get to.
It's sure a beautiful place. Anybody going to New Zealand, I'd highly recommend, if you can get down there, to go there. It's worth it. And it's a bit like the James Randi Educational Challenge, I think. You know, that it's run its course.
It's run its course. That's
right?
what the guy.
It's a lot of trouble to manage.
That's what I read about it. The man who was running it said it's run its course. I mean, what else can he do? He's had this for years and years and years. This money on offer for any psychic out there who could, demonstrate their psychic powers. And after decades or whatever it is with James Randi, decades and decades, nobody can do it.
Right.
Sometimes you got to draw a line in the sand and say, well, we did everything we could to bring you out and have you demonstrate your psychic powers. It can't go on indefinitely,
Absolutely. I totally understand. And I had helped run the IIG back in the day when it was called the IIG. It's now the CFI-IG Paranormal Challenge that had, I think they have $250,000. And the emails you get from people are incoherent most of the time. People can't say what it is they can do.
Yeah.
They are, I mean, you can exchange months worth of emails with people and you still aren't getting any closer to knowing what it is their paranormal ability is. It's time consuming and aggravating. And the people who are applying for this are not the people that we really would like to have apply for it. These are people who have some sort of issues, not like the TV psychics that we see that, you know, you would like to see them.
We would like to challenge. We'd like to see them
Right.
step forward. But you're right. I mean, the same thing happens in Australia. We get sometimes very difficult to understand rambling.
Letters written in crayon
letters.
kind of thing.
Well, yes and no. But people who can't get to the point or not sure what they can do, but they know they're psychic. And
It's very
and you're
sad.
right. It's sad. It is. At times it can be. But from our point of view, the point is, yes, it's time consuming. You've got to plow through all this stuff. And at the end of the day, even after a long and being very patient, which I have had this experience, nothing happens. You can't get anywhere. Or they'll turn. I've had people turn on me saying, well, now you're a skeptic. Well, I'm not going to do it now anyway. So,
It doesn't solve any problems. I'm I lived that world for a few years and it's interesting. I thought it was fascinating to the psychologically wise. I think there's many PhDs that could be written on the on the paranormal challenges out there, but I could totally understand why the puzzling world would want to end it while they had a chance. I mean, it was great, fine, thank you.
It did its job.
Yeah.
I think it did a job. But I mean, we still have it in Australia. We still have a $100,000 challenge, and I think we'll keep going with that. But I can understand that people reach the point where they say, well, what? Okay, we've tried. We've tried for decades. We've tried very hard. Nobody comes forward. If they do come forward, they can't really express what they need, what they can do. And the ones that we have had come to the test with 100% failure rate so far.
And then they excuse it away. So it's not like they learned anything. They just say, oh, well, it didn't work today. It's a bit like the Australian Prediction Project. I mean, if you added another year or another decade or another 10 decades, would it really change the results?
Honestly, I don't think it
No.
would. I
It's
mean,
just time-consuming.
I must admit the time period we covered, I chose that. It just sort of happened that way. You know, I thought that was a huge block of time, 2 decades.
21 years.
And we're covering 21 years and 3,811 predictions, which is far more than I thought when I started this, you know, far more. But when we finished, we thought, well, if that's not enough, nothing would be enough. You know, that's enough data and enough years.
Absolutely. And I totally agree. At a certain time, you've got to move on. Go to another project, take a vacation, adopt a dog, do something. I mean, come on already.
Make sure it's a psychic dog.
A psychic dog would be nice.
Well, Susan, thank you very much for that little update on GSOW. It's great. And I'm here again. I'm here in the very room where it all happens. I can see the little gargoyle over there and the curtains I'm familiar with on Zoom, and it's fantastic. And I look forward to the next few days. And folks, I'll be doing some more interviews over the next few days.
Yeah, it's a little crowded in here, sorry. But we have the Jerry Andrus project. I'm archiving the Jerry Andrus project.
For people
it's
who
almost a year.
People who don't know about that, what's a little quick overview of that?
Jerry Andrus was a wonderful friend of James Randi and Ray Hyman. He's one of the people who helped found the modern skeptic movement. He was a magician. He was a magician's magician. He created
optical illusions.
optical illusions.
Yeah.
Many optical illusions you see are actually invented or publicized or whatever by Jerry Andrus. Anyway, he died in 2007. He saved every piece of paper I think he's ever had. And they've been sitting in a storage locker in Oregon. And I went up a year ago almost and picked it up, a car full of paper. And I've been attempting to archive it. And so I'm frantically trying to finish this project.
Well, that means making a digital copy of everything, right?
Everything's scanned. Yeah. And things were just thrown in boxes. Imagine taking every piece of paper. I mean, shopping lists, phone numbers, notes that you made to yourself for something. I mean, everything. And important papers. Lots of important papers. Letters he wrote. He made copies of every letter he wrote. I have everything and I'm scanning it. And you have to put it in order. You have to figure out who it is. It's just so much work.
What's the ultimate goal? Is it to make it available for research purposes or to write a book or something?
Right. So we hope that there'll be people who want to write a book about him. Also, in the archives, there are other magicians and other skeptics that are mentioned. There's letters from James Randi, there's letters from Martin Garner, there's letters from all kinds of people in the magic world and outside of the magic world wrote letters to Jerry. Plus the inventions he made, plus just the history of our movement is being told through the pages, as well as I have all his letters he wrote home from World War II, and people wrote to him in World War II.
It's very historical
It's
stuff.
really interesting.
Wow.
I've learned so much from Jerry Andrus just reading these papers, and I'm still in the scanning process. I haven't been able to go through the articles and read them in depth, but he lived 70-something years, and I think I've got 70-something years of paper. So that's why I'm saying it's packed in here. My office is jam-packed with boxes.
You're right, but I must say it's neat.
Oh, I'm a very organized
It's
person.
very organized.
Very,
Everything's got little tabs and everything is in its place. So
yes, but I can't clean this up. I was thinking about that. You're coming here this week and I should clean it all up. And I thought, no, I have to live with this because it has to be something I see every day, every moment of my day and say, I got to get this damn thing finished. And that's the way it is, yeah. So eventually the archives will go somewhere else. They're going to exist someplace else. But the digital archives, he wrote poetry, songs, everything. You can't imagine. This guy was prolific.
amazing. I'm absolutely gobsmacked. Well, I'm looking forward to the next few days. But now from the War Room.
At Catnip Corners. In Salinas, California.
Susan Gerbeck, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
The Earth is only 6,000 years old. That's what Answers in Genesis and the Creation Museum say, and how can a museum be wrong?
Isn't Dr. Oz just wonderful? I loved today's episode. It didn't talk down to his adoring audience of women at all.
Science has proved that the subatomic quantum realm is as real as it is counterintuitive and bizarre. Therefore, I can use it to support quantum healing and quantum consciousness. After all, how can journals like Aquarius Metaphysics be wrong?
Evolution is just a theory. After all, if we came from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys?
We all have friends and family who believe these things and much more. Well, if you're a rational thinker who is tired of arguing on social media and never getting anywhere, we have a solution for you.
Join the Guerrilla Skepticism and Wikipedia team, and we will teach you how to add reliable scientific and skeptical information to the world's #1 source of information, Wikipedia.
We write new articles and improve existing ones. We remove pseudoscience, paranormal, and alt-med claims, substituting the actual facts. And we operate in many languages.
We've already reached tens of millions of people searching for information, but as you can imagine, we can never do enough.
So please join us. All you need is a PC and the desire to help educate the planet. In fact, you'll be educating the world while you sleep.
Contact us at gsowteam@gmail.com.
Guerrilla Skepticism. The time is now.
Music by PurplePlanet.com.
What he's going to do.
But this cat at my feet probably will give away your secrets, Mark Edward.
She'll be quiet. She'll be quiet.
Cuts the cards.
Hello, sweetie. Hello. This one is called
Imogen.
Imogen. Hello, darling. Lovely white
She won't
cat.
say anything.
Hello. I'm sitting at the table here with Mark Edward and Susan Gerbeck because I'm about to be dazzled, amazed, befuddled with a demonstration.
Boy, I better be good.
Yes, you've got to live up to the hype now.
So we're going to do a little test here using the famous Rhine ESP cards. And since this isn't television, you can't see them, but I will show
yes,
Richard what they look like.
Okay, I'm looking at
These are the famous circle, square, star, wavy lines, and plus symbol.
This is Zena cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
also known as.
They're repeated several times, so they're not all different, which a lot of people think. There's 5 of each, so if you can get 1 out of 5, you're pretty normal. But if you get more than that, or you can do something where you can perceive what the symbol is, then it's supposedly proof of the power of ESP. So you've seen what they look like. You're familiar with them. You can see them in your mind if you need to, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to put them right here. And what I want you to do is cut them and then complete the cut. That way, there'll be no way I could have any control over anything at any time.
All right, so Mark has now presented me with the deck. They're on the table here. It looks like a standard size of playing cards, but on the back, of course, are the wavy lines and the stars and everything. So I'm going to cut them, as you suggest, like that.
Yeah.
And
now pick up that portion on the table and complete the cut.
So like that. I've cut the deck.
That puts them out of my control.
Yep.
Now the fun part.
Okay.
Here, you have to hold the microphone.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is ask you to now cut anywhere you want.
Yeah.
Just like
Wherever.
what you
Just
did.
like this. So if I do this and put the pile like that.
Yeah. Now,
So I've cut them again.
That's
and
right. Now
we've got two decks.
Look at that card.
Top one?
That one.
Okay.
There,
Look at the
remember
card.
it.
Yep.
You got it? Now put it back.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to put it there. So there's not really any way I could know what
It's
you're
lost
thinking.
back into the deck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let me concentrate. I've got a minute or two to do this. What month were you born in?
November.
Around the 19th?
Not terribly far from the 19th, but
Okay. Because for some reason, I'm seeing a lot of straight lines. And November's close to Christmas. Was it the star?
Yes.
So let's try it again. Cut anywhere you want.
Oh, Susan, I'm being done here. I'm done like a dinner. All right. So let's see. I'll cut here. Right?
Okay, so again, now do you want that card or do you want to cut them again somewhere else? I'll give you a chance. So
No, I'll take this card. So
go
have a
ahead
look
and
at it. Yep.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Put it back.
Yep.
Okay.
Add a little peek. Yes. Mark's going into his concentration again.
Same card, the star. Is that right? That's kind of unusual.
Don't ask me. I can't see.
have the
I
card.
would just give him a clue.
Was
if I
that
saw
it?
Yes.
It was a star?
It's 2 out of 2. Yes.
How did you
Let's go for 3, just for fun, real quick.
Right. Cut it again?
Yeah, cut
All
it.
right.
This time, try and cut it a little differently somewhere else, maybe. Because you might have even cut to the same card.
There.
All right, so now again, you're going to look at that card,
Yep.
get it,
Okay.
and got it?
Peeking at the card now and putting it back. Yes.
Okay. Plus sign?
Well, yes, that's 3 out of 3.
I have no idea how you
I've
do
got a
it.
check for you for
There's
$100,000.
nothing he's doing. He's literally picking up the cards, cutting the deck. Richard's taking the card. I can't see it. There's no window that would have a reflection
now, I could
or
go a
anything.
little further if you wanted.
Yeah, okay. I do like a good mentalism trick.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to mix them a little bit here. See if I... So now I'm going to have you cut the cards anywhere you want.
All right, so the cards presented to me face down on the table. I'm going to cut here and complete the cut there, and I can't see any of those. So
Okay, are you
right.
happy or you want to cut again? It's
Nope.
entirely up to
I'm
you.
happy with that.
All right,
Yep.
I'm going to give you 3 separate cards. This card goes in your top shirt pocket.
All right, there it goes.
The next card, face down, goes in your right-hand coat pocket over there.
Yep.
The third card goes in your left-hand coat pocket.
Done.
Done. All right. So he now has 3 random cards. Am I right?
You're right, and I don't know what they are.
And you didn't look at any of
No,
them either.
no idea.
I'm going to give him a little shuffle here. See, I'm going to take these under the table.
So we can't see them. Mark can't
I
see them.
can't see them.
Yep.
And I'm going to try and do some psychic matching.
Ooh.
Yeah, without looking. This is called seeing with the fingertips. Very powerful magic. Okay, so please,
Yes.
if there's a spirit in the spirit world, which card do you want?
I'm going to choose the right one.
The right
The
one.
right one. Okay.
I hope it is the right one. I'm going to bring it out now.
Out comes Mark's card, and it's a match.
Star.
Amazing. What a great
1 out
trick.
of 5. I can barely stand in applause. All right, but that's not really that great. 1 out of 5 isn't that great. So which card do you want to use next? Your right hand?
Ooh. The right one.
Okay, so this This time, I'm confusing myself here. So you have one face down in your lap. Did you look at it?
No
Okay,
idea what it
This
is.
time you look at it
All
because
right.
I feel like we're on a roll.
Here's
now.
another card. Ooh, okay. I can
You
see
got
what that
it?
is. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to try and get it. Don't move your lips. That makes it easy for me. Okay, on the count of 3, we'll turn over. Are you ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
It's a match. Oh, very good.
Okay,
Well.
we're gonna do one last card, but before we do that, I am gonna give you the whole rest of the pack. And what I want you to do is really mix them really well, any way you want.
I've mixed the cards.
Okay, so I'm gonna take them back under the table.
All right.
And this time, I don't want you to look at it, and I'm
Okay.
not gonna look at it either, because we're building here. That's the premise. So I go back under the table.
Yeah. We
And
can't see the cards. You can't see the
I
cards.
can't see, and
No.
you don't know what it is. I don't know what
No.
it is either.
No.
So bring it around in front of you there.
Okay, there's the
And I'm
card.
going to try and get it. And on the count of 3, let's turn them over. 1, 2, 3.
Bingo. Circles. You got
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, have I learned a magic lesson today.
Very good.
Well, that was great. 3 out of 3, reaching under the
Everything
table.
can be examined.
And the rest of the deck are random and mixed up. Now Mark is just having another look through these Zener cards. What did you call them before? They're also called something else.
They're called ESP cards.
Yeah, ESP cards. I mean, you've known them, folks. It's the circle, the star, the wavy line, the square, and the.
Certainly, you remember the first Ghostbusters movie.
Yes, of course. It was a funny. What am I talking about? The star, the box, the wavy line, the cross.
That's actually a square. But you can call it the box. I like to call the wavy lines bacon.
It does look a bit like bacon. No, I mean.
That's for the pros, you know.
It is. Mentalism is.
I'm going to find out what the problem is.
He's looking through the deck at the moment. I love mentalism. I adore it. I think it's one of the finest forms of magic. But I don't think everybody is a fan of mentalism.
I don't care. No, a lot of people aren't. A lot of people like the bunnies and the birds and the boxes and the dancing girls and all that, and that's fine. That's certainly fine for whoever likes it. But for me, I want to travel real light.
Well,
and these are real light.
Well, with a deck of cards or a good mentalism routine, you can travel
with nothing.
With nothing.
Yeah. In other words, I don't go to a magic store. I usually go to a stationery store. And if I'm stuck, I learned that from Bob Cassidy, who one time had all of his props stolen. He was in the middle of nowhere and he had to make up his whole act by going to the stationery store. So he could do it.
Yeah. I mean, there are many fine mentalism acts with envelopes. For example, and writing things or producing things like that.
Sealed envelopes.
Sealed
very
envelopes.
Popular with mentalists. When they go to Manila, they always buy envelopes.
There's an old origami joke, I'm going to Manila. Yeah, I'm going to Manila. I'm going to.
Some paper.
I've been invited by the local origami club, the Manila Folders.
Oh, I'll have to remember that.
But the thing about mentalism is when people see the bunny out of the hat or the sawing the woman in half or whatever it is, there's a general agreement amongst the audience this is a magic trick and they're being fooled. But mentalism can really...
You'd be surprised.
I'd be surprised.
Especially in this day
But mentalism is a great case of when people see a mentalist act, they can't reconcile it any which way.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can jump to the conclusion this guy or girl has got real psychic
what we're
powers.
Selling, and that's why, it's unfortunate that some people take umbrage with that because, it can't work unless people have a tiny little bit of belief about it. If they're total skeptics with their arms rigidly folded in front of them,
Well, I mean, for someone like me, for example.
Total
skeptic. But when I go and see a mentalist act, I'm not exactly leaving my skepticism at the door, but I'm just there to enjoy the art and the showmanship and the routine and being
suggesting instead of parading. Some magic to me is just too visual, And mentalism tends to be more up cerebral streets and pathways in the mind. So,
Mark Edward, what a fun afternoon of mentalism. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, this is Susan Gerbic from GSOW. That's Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. I want to thank everyone who, via the Skeptic Zone podcast, has contacted me to become an editor on Wikipedia. Together, we have worked on or created over 1,200 Wikipedia pages. Countless thousands of people all over the world access those pages each day. In fact, we're over 52 million page views. Like many listeners, I also give back to the Skeptic Zone via monthly micropayments, and I want to encourage you to do the same. Is the information and entertainment you get each week from the show worth $5 or $10 a month? I sure think it is. Follow the link at skepticzone.tv and show your practical support. Thank you.
Time to dive back into those archives at trove at trove.nla.gov.au, digital resources from Australia. And sometimes we look further afield to digital archives from around the world. But this week, we're going to stick to Australia. And this is a sort of a part two from the last trove from last week, where we looked at references to Uri Geller. And one of the names associated with Uri Geller is our focus for this week, and that would be Andrija Paharic. Who was Andrija Paharic? Well, if we have a quick look at Wikipedia, Andrija Paharic from 1918 to 1995 was a medical and parapsychological researcher, medical inventor, physician and author, known as the person who brought Israeli Uri Geller and Dutch-born Peter Hurkos to the United States for scientific investigation. And there's a bit about his life. It says later on, Paharic was impressed by the stories about Dutch psychic Peter Hurkos and invited him to the US in 1956 to investigate his alleged abilities. In 1960, Paharic investigated materialization seances at Camp Chesterfield, and that's a whole other story, I promise you that, but discovered the use of cheesecloth being used to fake ectoplasm. Well, there you go. Paharic played himself on Perry Mason television series in the episode The Case of the Meddling Medium in 1961. In 1971, Paharic met Israeli psychic Uri Geller and endorsed him as a genuine psychic. And there's a lot more about the man there, if you care to look him up on Wikipedia, an interesting fellow. But let's look to the archives here in Australia to see where his name comes up, and it normally is in conjunction with Uri Geller. And our first return comes from the Papua New Guinea Post-Courier, dated the 23rd of April 1974, very early on in the Geller story. And the story says, something secret this way comes. London, Tuesday, Australian Associated Press. Israeli Uri Geller, R-U-I, so it's so early on in the Uri Geller story they didn't get the name right. That's interesting. Who claims to bend metal by willpower, is the agent for beings from outer space who are planning a mass landing on Earth in the next few years, his biographer says in a book published here yesterday. The assertion is made by American psychic researcher Andrija Paharic in what is being billed as the authorized biography of the 27-year-old Geller, who shot to world renown recently for feats which include making broken watches tick by touching them. According to Paharic, extraterrestrial intelligence, which has been hovering around the Earth for the past 800 years, is the source of Geller's metal bending and mind-reading powers. No world conquering is planned by the beings, just a chance to refuel from the, quote, barometric and cosmic layer, end quote, around the Earth, Baharij states. The beings are said to have been regularly seen hovering in their flying saucer. One wonders what was going through the mind of the reporter when they wrote that story. So we go forward in time a little bit to January the 31st, 1975. From the Australian Jewish News. Metal dynamo mind bender to tour here. The psychic phenomenon of the 70s, Israeli wonder boy Uri Geller, is to appear in an Australian concert tour. Geller is the former Israeli paratrooper, now 27, whose astonishing psychic powers have astounded millions of people throughout Europe, the USA, and South Africa. Uri Geller's Melbourne appearance will be on March 19 in the Town Hall. Other dates: Newcastle Civic Theatre, March 5, Sydney Town Hall, March 7, Brisbane Town Hall, March 8, Perth Concert Hall, March 15, Adelaide Apollo, March 18. And I need to stop here just briefly because this is so, maybe there is a cosmic karmic irony meter going off at the moment, because this sounds very much like the schedule that I and James Randi had some years ago when we toured Australia with the James Randi the movie An Honest Liar, and where on various occasions I would interview Randy on stage. We were jumping on planes and hotels and planes and hotels: Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to laugh. That's ironic. We better read on. A BBC television audience of millions and a large live studio audience, including scientists and psychokineticists, saw metal keys, forks, knives, and spoons bend and buckle under the gaze of Uri Geller. And another stop from me here. Classic misreporting, of course. It sounds good, and it almost makes it look like all Geller had to do was look at things to make them bend and so forth, which of course isn't the case. A special scientist sitting alongside Geller suddenly leapt up in disbelief and exclaimed that the minute hand of his watch had bent double. Before the program ended, the BBC had received calls from 15 badly shaken viewers who said metal items they were touching had suddenly twisted out of shape. And, it is claimed, he can photograph himself without taking off the camera's light-proof lens cap. Dr. J.P. Chilton, lecturer in metallurgy and materials science at Cambridge University, says Geller is either the cleverest magician of the century or he has something new. There is no halfway house. Science interest. While the arguing grows louder, scientists are queuing up to prove him right or wrong. The soft-spoken mind-bender said, I do not understand this power, but it has been with me since childhood. I always welcome any authentic scientific tests to try and determine its source. In the BBC TV show, Geller also displayed uncanny powers of extrasensory perception, ESP. Geller says he first became aware of his powers as a 7-year-old schoolboy. Sitting at school, bored as little boys often are, he looked at his watch and wished, quote, with all his heart, end quote, that it was time to go home, when he saw to his amazement that the hands started to move. He told his parents about his experience, but kept it secret from his friends. The last thing he wanted was for them to think him odd. Even today, Uri, who can with a glance cause your car key to curl up in your hand, will insist that he is perfectly normal. Let's stop here again. And this particular one, Uri, who can with a glance cause your car key to curl up in your hand, Well, no, he never could, and I know how that trick works, and so do many magicians. But in this case, the trick seems to be accomplished by misreporting the actual events, leaving the reader at the time to think that these events really happened. We read on. I don't quite understand what happens. All I do is think bend, 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 and the key bends. Late start. After a spell as a paratrooper in the Israeli army, he took a job in civilian life as an export manager for a textile firm. It was only in mid-1970 that he started to appear before small audiences to show his powers of telepathy and psychokinesis. In less than 18 months, this 27-year-old, with his good looks and boyish charm, had become extremely well known throughout Israel. In April 1972, Yuri left Israel to go to Europe, where he immediately attracted wide attention. In Munich, with journalists and photographers as witnesses, Yuri stopped a cable car in mid-air and an escalator in a downtown department store. He created further interest when, during television appearances in America and England, hundreds of viewers reported that keys, spoons, and other metal objects bent in their homes, and watches and clocks which had not worked for months and years started to run again. The first scientific test on Geller was conducted by Dr. Andrus Paharich, an American physician with 25 years psychic research experience. Subsequently, Dr. Paharich, who is listed in Who's Who in the East, Leaders in American Science, and American Men of Medicine, has written a book published last month in the States on the mystery of Uri Geller. Scientists at the prestigious Stanford University Research Institute in California were cynical at first, yet changed their tune after they conducted intensive and controlled experiments on him. Forgive the laughter, and I recommend the book from James Randi, The Truth About Uri Geller, which covers these tests. We read on. Regular tests. The respected New Scientist magazine has set up a committee to examine Geller. Some critics claim Geller distracts his audience's attention, then puts pressure on the cutlery between his fingers until it bends. He appears merely to massage them. Whether fact or fantasy, an unfathomable mystery or gross trickery, Australian audiences will soon have the opportunity of formulating their own opinions on Uri Geller. So that was an interesting report from the Australian Jewish News. And where's the byline? I don't see. I'm not sure who would have written that at the time. Possibly it was from one of the news services at the time. Now, I find it a little difficult to be too critical. It was difficult in those days to know what was really going on, so it's simply a report. But as you can see, or as you heard by listening to that, the glowing reports of Geller's stage routine and the tests at the Stanford Research Institute. And reports like this all fed into the, dare I say it, the myth of Uri Geller. Now, finally, we come to the year 1984, and in this instance, it's the Australian Jewish Times, and dated the 22nd of March. And the item is called Psi, P-S-I, Psi in the Sky. Andrus Paharich claims to communicate with intelligences in outer space, using a code based on the Hebrew alphabet. Hayam Shapiro reports, and I apologize if I haven't pronounced that name entirely correctly. Ever since Eve ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge, there have been humans trying to expand their powers beyond what are normally considered man's natural limitations. Andrus Paharich seems to be familiar with most of them, the powers and the people who acquire them. They call me the elder statesman of parapsychologists, he told the Jerusalem Post in an interview this month, mainly because I've lived longer than most of them. Baharich, who was in Jerusalem for Forecast 84, a multidisciplinary conference on prognostication, which attracts parapsychologists, astrologers, Kabbalists, palmists, healers, and clairvoyants from around the world, is no stranger to Israel. He claims to have discovered Uri Geller. It is probably true to say that if it weren't for Baharich, Geller would still be an obscure nightclub entertainer, unknown outside the borders of his country and dismissed by many of his fellow countrymen as a magician and a fraud. At 66, Baharich, who says he has no special powers of his own, seems to have more than enough of the conventional energy. With twinkling blue eyes, a trim moustache, and a haircut that is different enough to be unconventional, but not freaky, he speaks with disarming reasonableness and humor about flying saucers, messages from outer space, and winning wars by using telepathy. With the same good humor, he relates that his house has been burnt down several times and that a number of secret services have tried to kill him. Asked who, he laughs. All of them. The CIA, the British MI5, the Mossad, etc. Born in Chicago to Yugoslavian parents, he was raised in what he describes as a tough neighborhood. When he completed high school, he was all set to go out and work as a laborer when a judge who knew him and took an interest in him persuaded him to go to university, where he studied philosophy. Because he didn't see how he could support himself through philosophy, he switched to medicine. In addition to his MD, he also has a PhD in philosophy. At some point towards the end of his studies, he began to take an interest in telepathy and other paranormal phenomena. Using a Faraday cage, he set up an experiment to establish that thoughts could be transmitted telepathically from mind to mind. The next step was to determine whether mind could influence matter. If only he could find someone who could move a match just a millimeter under glass, he told himself. Soon afterwards he heard of Uri Geller and came to Israel to see him. I got to Tel Aviv and saw some crazy kid in a nightclub. It was very low level. Everybody was sitting around smoking and drinking, and he was doing his thing. But it got my interest. Geller snapped a gold ring in someone's clenched fist, and I sent the ring off to my colleagues at Stanford to have the break examined in the lab. Thousands of people can bend metal today and stop and start watches, but Uri was the first, says Baharich. Baharich, who extended his stay in Israel for almost 5 months, says his visit was arranged by an Israeli intelligence officer. When Baharich realized that Geller could be of use to Israeli military intelligence, he spoke of Aharon Yavi, and again I'm sorry if I've pronounced that wrong, then head of military intelligence, about the Israeli wonder. Geller was tested by the military authorities and, according to Baharich, correctly guessed the number of MiGs in the various Arab air forces. At the same time, Baharich overcame Geller's resistance to being hypnotized. The researcher responded that, under hypnosis, Geller would be able to reveal the source of his powers. Hi, the big power in the sky, as Baharich calls it in semi-jest. Through the hypnotized Geller, Baharich started talking to what he is convinced is a power from outer space. Among the messages was one saying that the Egyptians were planning to attack Israel on December 27, 1971. The information was passed on to Israeli intelligence, says Baharich. Israel let Egypt know it was aware of the plans, and the attack was averted. Uri has worked with various intelligence agencies for the past 12 years, which is really funny because everybody in Israel thinks that Uri Geller is the biggest schmuck alive, says Baharich. Asked why, if Geller prevented war in 1971, he did not do so in 1973, Baharich says that in October 1973 he was in Germany with Geller when the latter got a message that Egypt was going to attack. The Israelis were informed, but this time, apparently, Israel had to go through the war to teach a lesson to the whole world. The lesson came, he says, when the Arabs cut off their oil supplies to the west. Paharich adds that he has trained many people to work for military intelligence using the same techniques as he used with Geller under hypnosis. In the US, as in the Soviet Union, he remarks, psychics are used by the military. One psychic warned President Reagan that he would be shot 3 days before James Hinckley tried to kill him. And I think actually that disturbed man was John Hinckley at the time. Nevertheless, despite stepped-up precautions, the president was shot, but not killed, just as the psychic had prophesied, Paharich says. He maintains, with a good-humored smile, that he is under constant surveillance. I can't talk on the phone because it's being tapped by 5 different nations. When he visits Israel, he says, the police always find his name on their blacklist and detain him until the word comes from the authorities to let him go. In Israel, of course, they would never admit to using psychics, he says. Too many religious fanatics would object, and the other countries could use such information. The psychic powers, he says, can be used for good or bad. It is possible to kill at a distance, he says. The Soviets like that kind of thing. There are psychics who specialize in stopping tanks. You don't have to stop the whole mass. It would take far too much energy. All you have to do is move one little fuse. In America, he says, the first contact with military intelligence came when he was doing tests with Geller at the Stanford Research Institute. A military computer on a different floor of the same building began to go haywire, and the intelligence people came down to find out the source of the trouble. Shortly afterwards, he says, the U.S. intelligence service began to work on psychic phenomena, while at the same time conducting a public campaign to discredit it. The climax of the campaign was a large spread in Time magazine, quote, exposing Uri Geller as a charlatan, end quote. Now, Paharich says, the intelligence establishment in America has done an about-turn and treats the psychics seriously, in public as well as in private. Once again, he says, Time has been called into action, this time to support their claims. But it is doubtful whether any paper not devoted to psychic subjects would take seriously Paharich's account of his first encounter with life from outer space. Before describing the encounter, perhaps one ought to recall that Aldous Huxley was so impressed by Paharich's first book, The Sacred Mushroom, that he called him, quote, one of the most brilliant minds of parapsychology, end quote. Colin, the outsider, Wilson, writes in Mysteries that Paharich's chief contributions to parapsychology can be found in his book Beyond Telepathy, 1962. A balanced account of experiments in telepathy conducted by well-known psychics like Peter Hurkos and Elaine Garrett. It is also an attempt to create a physics of paranormal experience based on psi-plasma. Paharich suggests we become good telepathic senders when we are in states of anger, fear, and aggression, and good receivers when we are in states of relaxation and serenity. The theory caused considerable discussion, and Beyond Telepathy quickly became a classic in its field. But when Paharich met Geller, this credibility received a tremendous battering. This is how Wilson describes it. If Beyond Telepathy buttressed Paharich's reputation, his next book came close to destroying it. It was called Uri, A Journey of the Mystery of Uri Geller, 1974. This is a straightforward narrative of Paharich's 3-year investigation of Geller. Yet it ends by producing total confusion and bewilderment. Paharich's meeting with Geller occurred in the Jaffa discotheque in August 1971. Geller's feats of telepathy and precognition impressed Paharich, and if the book was restricted to describing these feats, it would undoubtedly impress most open-minded readers. But at this point, extraterrestrials enter the story, and it turns into a chronicle of marvels and improbabilities. Placed in a trance, Geller describes how, at the age of 3, he had fallen asleep in the garden opposite his home, and awakened to see a huge, shining figure standing over him and a bright, bowl-shaped object floating in the sky overhead. And while Geller was still hypnotized, a mechanical voice began to speak from the air above his head, explaining that they, the space intelligences, had found Geller in the garden and had been programming him ever since. Paharich, the voice said, had been programmed to take care of Yuri. Relentless succession of miracles fills the rest of the book. Objects are always disappearing and then reappearing. UFOs are sighted. The car engine stops and starts again for no reason. Paharich's camera bag is miraculously teleported 3,000 miles from New York to Tel Aviv. All this leaves the reader bewildered and exhausted, and curiously finally turns into a kind of punch-drunk indifference. Now for Paharich's description of his first encounter with a UFO. Sitting in his Hilton hotel room in Jerusalem, Paharich recalls that he was with Geller in Tel Aviv in the early 1970s when the latter suddenly told him that they must go to the car and drive around. Geller insisted that Paharich drive, although the American had no knowledge of the area. They drove at random for about half an hour. Then, says Paharich, they came to a sand embankment in East Tel Aviv, and Geller ordered him to stop. They climbed the embankment and saw a round, saucer-like object with something resembling a strobe light. Geller entered the object while Paharich waited outside and photographed it. When Geller emerged, he took Paharich's camera and held it for a while, and the film vanished. The rest, as the saying goes, is history, recorded in the annals of the Society for Psychic Research. Paharich believes he has now perfected a system of communicating regularly with intelligences from outer space. He goes to sleep and leaves on a tape recorder, and when he wakes he finds a mechanical voice has been recorded. Other communications come through his watch, which starts and stops for no apparent reason. By noting down the times at which it stops and starts, and using a code based on the Hebrew alphabet, Paharich gets his messages. He tells me he had prior warning of the floods and droughts that have recently been plaguing the planet. This phase will end in 1984, apparently, and will be followed by something worse. Sporadic freezing spells of 2 or 3 days. Somebody is screwing around with the planet, he says, explaining that he means extraterrestrials. In order to check his and other people's prophecies in a methodical manner, he suggests setting up an institute for prophecy in Jerusalem, where people can send in their predictions up to a year in advance. We'll set aside those who are wrong and concentrate on those who are right, he says. He appears amused at being told of the Jewish saying that since the destruction of the temple, the gifts of prophecy have been given to fools and babies. I think we have entered a new age of prophecy, he counters. It began in 1947. That's when flying saucers were first reported in large numbers, and was when the UN voted to petition Palestine. And that was when Uri Geller was born. So there we go, some references in the Australian news from various sources, originally I would imagine, about the character Andrea Paharich, and of course his association with Uri Geller. But you too can find out about all sorts of associations with psychics and other people by looking up the archives at Trove, Trove, trove.nla.gov.au, trove.gov.au. Thousands upon ridiculous number of digitized newspapers, articles, journals, and so on for you to search. And, like me, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Thank you for that old pizza and Vegemite, by the way, Susan.
You're welcome to come and eat my old food anytime you'd like.
I will do that.
And please come and take care of all the Vegemite that we have in the house, because nobody eats it but you.
I've been doing that, and I must tell you that when I had my Vegemite toast a little while ago, I looked at the jar, and the jar said used by 2016.
Oh, interesting. It's probably improving the flavor.
But it was all right. What a treat it has been over the last few days to visit you, Susan. I hope I can see you again, but I can always see you online.
Yes, you can.
And until next week, folks, with the last thank you to all those people who contribute to the Skeptic Zone at PayPal and Patreon, which we always encourage people to do. Mm-hmm. This is Richard Saunders and Susan Gerbeck signing off from the War Room here at Catnip Corners.
Very good. Great to see you.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation. Now the washing machine is being turned off. Susan's coming back. I'm here with Mark Edward and Susan Gerbeck to play the dice game.
Yay!
I'm
all ready.
Have you ever played a live dice game with me in person? I don't remember, Susan. You're always guessing 5. What number do you want to guess?
5.
Oh, that's a surprise.
It's going to come up again. I'm telling you.
Mark Edward, there it is. It's just a standard D10.
Right.
It's not gimmicked or tricked.
He's a magician. He's
Since
looking
I've
at
never seen one before. How do I trust you?
He's looking like, okay, what else has Richard got in his hands? He's looking for the
it looks like a game die.
Yeah, it's one for Dungeons.
So am I supposed to choose a number?
Yes.
Or?
Now Susan has chosen 5, which is a complete surprise.
And you didn't tell me the range.
It's it's 1 to 10 or 0 to 9. There's a 0 on it, but that can represent.
I'll
10.
take 4.
4.
Yeah.
And I'll take 2.
Okay.
So you can verify that that's a fair shake.
Watch his hands.
Wait. Open both hands again.
All right.
Okay, all right.
Not a skeptic at all. It's a 4.
I told you.
It's a 4. All right, that's the first one. Here comes the second one. So
it's another 5. I mean, it'll be a 5.
8.
Well, it's double 4.
Last one.
So very justified.
Yours, what? You didn't tell us what yours was.
2. Did I say 2?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Okay, here, last one.
Short memory.
Yes. 4?
That's my number.
So you got 2.
Did you do that with your mind?
Yeah, he's a mentalist.
I can't help it.
We should do a supplementary. You can roll it, Susan, please.
Okay.
A supplementary?
Yes.
I thought I won something.
It's probably going to be
You
another
won
4.
bragging rights. Okay, so you guys are sticking with your numbers? 2,
No,
4,
I'm changing mine.
Oh.
6.
6.
Okay, 2, 6, and 5. All right, here we go.
2. Thank you. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
very much.
You're welcome, Richard.